Isabella Munro's hands trembled as she watched the hotel manager, Richard Sterling, humiliate the elderly man in the marble lobby of the Grand Palazzo Hotel. The 81-year-old gentleman stood with quiet dignity despite the verbal assault, his worn clothes and simple appearance making him an easy target for Sterling's cruelty. "I told you, old man, we don't have any reservation under your name," Sterling sneered, his voice echoing through the opulent lobby. "This is a five-star establishment, not a homeless shelter." Isabella wanted to intervene, but she needed this job. As a single mother working 2 jobs to support her young son, she couldn't afford to lose her position as a front desk clerk. Still, something about the elderly man's gentle demeanor and the way he accepted the mistreatment with grace broke her heart. "Please, sir," the old man said softly, his Italian accent barely detectable. "My son made this reservation." "Perhaps there's been a mistake." Sterling laughed harshly. "The only mistake here is you thinking you belong in a place like this." What none of them knew was that this moment would trigger a chain of revelations that would change everything and expose secrets that had been hidden for decades. To witness this incredible story of hidden identities and shocking revelations, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Share in the comments where you're watching from as we work together toward our goal of 1,000 subscribers. Isabella Munro had been working at the Grand Palazzo Hotel for 6 months, and in that time, she'd seen manager Richard Sterling display his cruelty to countless guests he deemed unworthy of the establishment's luxury. But watching him humiliate the elderly gentleman on this rainy Tuesday evening felt different, more personal, more wrong. The Grand Palazzo was Chicago's most exclusive hotel, a testament to old-world elegance with its marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and gold-leafed details. Isabella had taken the job out of desperation after her previous employer had laid off half their staff. As a 26-year-old single mother, she couldn't afford to be picky about work environments, even when that environment included Sterling's toxic management style. "Listen, old-timer," Sterling continued, his voice dripping with disdain as he leaned across the mahogany reception desk. "I don't know what kind of scam you're trying to pull, but it won't work here. Security." The elderly man, who had introduced himself simply as Henry, remained remarkably calm. He wore a simple grey cardigan over a white shirt, his silver hair neatly combed despite the rain outside. His eyes, a striking blue that seemed to hold decades of wisdom and pain, never left Sterling's face. "There's no scam, young man," Henry said quietly. "My son, Dominic, made this reservation for me. Perhaps you could check again?" Isabella's fingers flew across her computer keyboard, searching for any reservation under the name Henry. She found nothing, but something nagged at her. The way Henry carried himself, the quiet authority in his voice, despite his humble appearance, it didn't match Sterling's assumption that he was some vagrant trying to scam them. "Sir," Isabella interjected carefully, "could you tell me your last name? Sometimes reservations are filed under different—" "He already told us his name," Sterling snapped, "and there's no reservation. Security is on their way to escort this man out." Henry's shoulders sagged slightly, the first sign of defeat Isabella had seen from him. "I understand. Perhaps there's been a miscommunication with my son. I'll find somewhere else to stay." "Wait," Isabella said, her conscience overriding her fear of Sterling's wrath. "Sir, it's pouring outside, and it's late. Perhaps we could—" "Munro!" Sterling's voice cracked like a whip. "Get back to work and stop interfering with hotel policy." Isabella watched helplessly as 2 security guards approached Henry. The elderly man gathered his small overnight bag with dignity, nodding politely to the guards. "Thank you for your kindness, miss," Henry said to Isabella, his eyes meeting hers with such warmth that she felt tears prick her own eyes. "You have a good heart." As Henry was escorted toward the exit, Isabella noticed something that made her blood run cold. Sterling was smirking, clearly enjoying the power trip of throwing out someone he perceived as beneath him. But she also noticed the other staff members. Some looked uncomfortable, others seemed to share Sterling's cruel amusement. "That's how we handle riffraff," Sterling announced loudly enough for the entire lobby to hear. "This is the Grand Palazzo, not a charity." Isabella bit her tongue, but her hands shook as she returned to her work. Something about this felt wrong, deeply, fundamentally wrong. 20 minutes later, as Isabella was processing check-ins for legitimate guests, her computer screen flickered. A new reservation appeared, time-stamped just moments ago. Henry Russo, Presidential Suite, extended stay, paid in full. Isabella's breath caught. Russo. She quickly searched the hotel's ownership records, something she'd never thought to do before. Her heart stopped. The Grand Palazzo Hotel was owned by Russo Enterprises. The CEO and primary owner was listed as Dominic Russo. "Oh my God," Isabella whispered, the pieces clicking into place. Henry hadn't been trying to scam anyone. He was the owner's father. She looked toward the entrance, where Henry had been escorted out into the rain, then at Sterling, who was now chatting casually with the concierge about his weekend plans. The man had just humiliated and ejected the father of the hotel's owner. Isabella's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Henry. Please don't worry about tonight. These things happen. You were very kind." Somehow, the elderly man had gotten her number, probably from her name tag and the hotel directory. The fact that he was texting to comfort her after what he'd been put through made Isabella's chest tight with emotion. Before she could respond, the hotel's main phone rang. Isabella answered automatically. "Grand Palazzo Hotel. This is Isabella. How may I help you?" "I need to speak with your manager immediately." The voice was deep, authoritative, and carried an edge that made Isabella's spine straighten involuntarily. "May I ask who's calling?" "Dominic Russo. I own the hotel." Isabella's hand tightened on the phone. "One moment, please." She flagged down Sterling, who was still basking in his earlier power display. "Mr. Sterling, there's a call for you. It's the owner." Sterling's expression shifted from smugness to confusion to concern in rapid succession. "Russo, why would he be calling at this hour?" Isabella handed him the phone and watched as Sterling's face went through a series of color changes, from pale to flushed to ashen. "Yes, sir. No, sir. There must be some mistake. We don't have any record of—" "What?" "Your father." Sterling's eyes darted around the lobby frantically. "Sir, I can explain. There was no reservation in the system, and the man didn't—" "Yes, sir. Right away, sir." Sterling hung up the phone with shaking hands. His face was now completely white. "Where is he?" Sterling demanded, grabbing Isabella's arm roughly. "Where's the old man?" "You threw him out," Isabella said, pulling her arm free. "Into the rain. Remember?" "This is a disaster," Sterling muttered, running his hands through his hair. "Russo is on his way here. He sounded like he wanted to kill someone." Isabella felt a mix of satisfaction and terror. Satisfaction that Sterling was finally facing consequences for his cruelty, but terror at what this might mean for her job. She was just a front desk clerk who had tried to help. Would she be caught in the crossfire? "Monroe," Sterling said suddenly, his voice desperate. "You tried to help him, right? You were nice to him?" "I tried to be professional and kind, yes." "Good. That's good. When Russo gets here, you tell him that. You tell him you tried to help his father." Isabella stared at Sterling, seeing him clearly for the first time. He wasn't just cruel, he was a coward. And now that cowardice was on full display as he realized the magnitude of his mistake. Outside, thunder rumbled ominously, and Isabella couldn't help but think it was fitting. A storm was coming to the Grand Palazzo Hotel, and its name was Dominic Russo. The next 30 minutes felt like hours. Sterling paced the lobby like a caged animal, barking orders at staff to make everything perfect, while simultaneously trying to reach Henry by phone. Isabella watched the chaos unfold while continuing to check in guests, her mind racing with questions about the family drama that was about to explode in their pristine lobby. "Any luck reaching him?" Isabella asked during a brief lull. "He's not answering," Sterling said, sweat beading on his forehead despite the hotel's perfect climate control. Probably doesn't want to talk to anyone from here after what happened. Isabella pulled out her phone and showed Sterling the text from Henry. He contacted me. He seems to be okay, just disappointed. Sterling's eyes widened. He texted you? What did he say? Can you call him back? I'm not going to harass an elderly man who was just humiliated in his own son's hotel, Isabella said firmly. Maybe you should think about how you're going to apologize instead of trying to control the situation. Before Sterling could respond, the hotel's main entrance doors opened, and Isabella felt the atmosphere in the lobby change instantly. It was as if the temperature had dropped 10 degrees and the air itself had become charged with electricity. 3 men entered, moving with the kind of coordinated precision that spoke of military training or something more dangerous. They wore expensive suits that couldn't quite hide the fact that they were clearly bodyguards. Behind them walked a man who commanded attention without saying a word. Dominic Rousseau was nothing like Isabella had expected. She'd imagined someone older, perhaps soft from years of wealth and privilege. Instead, the man approaching the front desk looked like he could have stepped out of a magazine cover, if that magazine specialized in dangerous, powerful men. He was tall, probably 6'3", with broad shoulders that filled out his charcoal grey suit perfectly. His dark hair was styled with precision, and his face was all sharp angles and strong lines. But it was his eyes that made Isabella's breath catch. Dark, intelligent, and currently burning with barely controlled fury. "Mr. Rousseau," Sterling stammered, rushing forward with his hand extended. "What an unexpected pleasure. I'm Richard Sterling, the hotel manager. I believe there's been some sort of misunderstanding." Dominic didn't take the offered hand. Instead, his gaze swept the lobby before settling on Sterling with the intensity of a laser. "Where is my father?" His voice was quiet, controlled, but Isabella could hear the dangerous undertone. "Sir, there was a confusion with the reservation system. We had no record of—" "I didn't ask about your systems," Dominic interrupted, his voice still eerily calm. "I asked where my father is." Sterling swallowed hard. He left, sir, but I'm sure we can contact him and—" "He left?" Dominic took a step closer to Sterling, and Isabella noticed that the manager actually backed up. "You mean you threw him out, into the rain, at night? My 81-year-old father? Sir, if we had known what? That he deserved basic human decency? That elderly guests should be treated with respect regardless of their appearance?" Isabella found herself stepping forward before she could stop herself. "Mr. Rousseau." Dominic's attention shifted to her, and she felt the full weight of his focus. Up close, she could see that his eyes weren't just dark. They were a deep brown with flecks of gold, and they were currently assessing her with the same intensity he'd directed at Sterling. "You're Isabella Monroe," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, sir. I tried to help your father. I wanted to look further into the reservation issue, but—" She glanced at Sterling, who was watching their exchange with growing panic. "But Mr. Sterling overruled you," Dominic finished. "Yes, sir." Dominic nodded slowly, then turned back to Sterling. "Tell me exactly what happened. Every word you said to my father, every action you took." Sterling's face had gone from white to green. "Mr. Rousseau, I can explain." "Then explain." As Sterling stammered through his version of events, a heavily sanitized account that painted him as simply following protocol, Isabella watched Dominic's expression grow darker. She also noticed that other hotel staff had gathered at a respectful distance, sensing that something significant was happening. "And then," Sterling concluded desperately, "Miss Monroe here tried to help. She was very professional, very kind to your father." Dominic's gaze returned to Isabella. "Is that an accurate account of what happened?" Isabella felt every eye in the lobby on her. She could lie, minimize Sterling's cruelty to protect her job. Or she could tell the truth and face whatever consequences came with it. "No, sir," she said quietly. "It's not accurate." Sterling made a strangled sound, but Dominic held up a hand for silence. "Tell me what really happened," Dominic said to Isabella. Isabella took a deep breath. Your father was polite and respectful from the moment he walked in. He explained that you had made a reservation for him, and he gave his first name as Henry. Mr. Sterling immediately became hostile, calling him names, suggesting he was running a scam. When I tried to help by asking for his last name to search more thoroughly, Mr. Sterling told me to stop interfering. What names did he call my father? Isabella hesitated, glancing at Sterling's pleading expression. He called him old-timer, old man, and suggested he belonged in a homeless shelter rather than a five-star hotel. The silence that followed was deafening. Isabella could hear her own heartbeat, the distant sound of traffic outside, even the soft hum of the air conditioning. But no one in the lobby dared to speak. Finally, Dominic turned back to Sterling. You humiliated my father. You threw him out of his own son's hotel because you judged him by his appearance. Sir, I had no way of knowing. You had no way of knowing he deserved to be treated like a human being. Dominic's voice had dropped to barely above a whisper, which somehow made it more terrifying than if he had shouted. Isabella noticed that Dominic's bodyguards had positioned themselves strategically around the lobby, and she realized that this wasn't just a family dispute. This was something much more serious. Mr. Sterling, Dominic continued, you're fired. Security will escort you out. You have 10 minutes to clean out your office. Sir, please, 10 minutes, Dominic repeated. And if I ever hear that you've mistreated another elderly person, another guest, or another employee anywhere in this city, you'll discover that I have a very long memory and very little patience for bullies. As security moved to escort the now sobbing Sterling away, Dominic turned to address the gathered staff. Let this be clear to everyone, he announced, his voice carrying easily through the lobby. This hotel exists to serve our guests with dignity and respect. Anyone who can't meet that standard will find themselves looking for new employment. Then his eyes found Isabella again, and she saw something in them that made her pulse quicken. Not fear this time, but something else entirely. Miss Monroe, could I speak with you privately? Isabella followed Dominic into the hotel's executive office, her heart pounding with each step. The room was elegant and masculine, with dark wood furniture, leather chairs, and floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a stunning view of Chicago's skyline. Dominic's bodyguards remained outside, giving them privacy. Please sit, Dominic said, gesturing to one of the chairs across from the large mahogany desk. Isabella perched on the edge of the chair, unsure of what to expect. Was she in trouble for not doing more to help his father? Was he angry that she hadn't called him immediately when the situation escalated? Dominic moved to the window, his hands clasped behind his back as he looked out at the city lights. My father texted you. Yes, sir. He wanted to make sure I didn't worry about what happened. He was very kind. That sounds like him, Dominic said softly. He's always been more concerned about other people's feelings than his own. Isabella studied Dominic's profile, noting the tension in his jaw, the way his shoulders carried the weight of responsibility. He spoke about you during the brief time he was here. He seemed very proud. Dominic turned from the window, his expression unreadable. What exactly did he say? Just that his son had made the reservation for him. He never raised his voice, never became angry, even when Mr. Sterling was... Isabella paused, choosing her words carefully. Even when Sterling was what? Cruel, Isabella said simply. Your father maintained his dignity, even when he was being treated terribly. Dominic was quiet for a long moment, and Isabella could see him processing this information. You tried to help him. I tried to do my job properly, and I tried to treat him with the respect any guest deserves, even though it could have cost you your job. Isabella considered this. I suppose so, yes. It didn't feel like a choice at the time. It felt like the right thing to do. Dominic moved closer, and Isabella became acutely aware of his presence, the way he filled the space, the subtle scent of his cologne, the intensity of his focus when he looked at her. Tell me about yourself, Isabella. How long have you worked here? 6 months, Isabella replied, wondering where this conversation was heading. I needed a job with good benefits and flexible hours. Flexible hours? Isabella hesitated. She'd learned to be careful about revealing too much personal information to employers, but something about Dominic's genuine interest made her want to answer honestly. I have a 5-year-old son, she said. I need to be able to pick him up from school and be home with him in the evenings. And his father, not in the picture, Isabella said quickly, then wondered why she'd shared that information. Dominic nodded thoughtfully. It can't be easy, raising a child on your own while working full-time. We manage, Isabella said, lifting her chin slightly. She'd learned to be defensive about her situation. Too many people assumed single mothers were looking for handouts or sympathy. I'm sure you do more than manage, Dominic said, and there was something in his tone that made Isabella look at him more closely. You strike me as someone who excels at whatever she sets her mind to. Before Isabella could respond, Dominic's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and smiled, the first genuine smile Isabella had seen from him. It's my father, he said, answering immediately. Papa, are you all right? Isabella could hear the elderly man's voice through the phone, though she couldn't make out the words. Dominic's expression softened as he listened. Yes, I'm at the hotel now, Dominic said. The situation has been handled. No, Papa, you don't need to worry about the staff member who helped you. She's here with me now, and she's going to be just fine. Isabella's eyebrows rose. They were talking about her. Actually, Dominic continued, his eyes meeting Isabella's, I was hoping you might come back to the hotel. There's someone I'd like you to meet properly. Yes, the young woman who tried to help you, Isabella. After a few more minutes of conversation in what sounded like a mixture of English and Italian, Dominic ended the call. He's coming back, Dominic announced. He wants to thank you properly for your kindness. That's not necessary. It is to him, Dominic interrupted gently. And it is to me. Isabella felt a flutter of nervousness. Mr. Russo, I should probably get back to work. The front desk is being handled by other staff members, Dominic said. Isabella, I want to offer you a different position. Sir, I need a new hotel manager, someone who understands that hospitality means treating every guest with dignity and respect, someone who has the courage to do the right thing even when it's difficult. Isabella stared at him. You're offering me Sterling's job. I'm offering you the opportunity to run this hotel the way it should be run, with compassion, integrity, and excellence. But I don't have management experience. You have something more valuable than experience, Dominic said, moving to sit on the edge of his desk, closer to her chair. You have character, you have instincts, and you have the respect of the staff. I saw how they looked at you when you stood up to Sterling. Isabella's mind raced. The promotion would mean better pay, better hours, the ability to provide more stability for her son. But it also meant more responsibility, more pressure. Why me? She asked. You could hire any experienced manager in the city. Because, Dominic said, his voice dropping to that low, intimate tone that made her pulse quicken, you saw an elderly man being mistreated and you tried to help him, even though you had nothing to gain and everything to lose. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are. Before Isabella could respond, there was a knock on the office door. One of Dominic's bodyguards entered. Boss, your father is here. Send him in, Dominic said, standing. The door opened, and Henry entered, looking much more dignified now that he was dry and had been treated with respect. His eyes immediately found Isabella. My dear, he said warmly, approaching her chair. I wanted to thank you for your kindness earlier. In a situation where I felt quite alone, you made me feel seen. Isabella stood, feeling emotional at the elderly man's words. I'm just sorry you were treated so poorly. That's in the past, Henry said, waving dismissively. What matters now is the future. He looked between Isabella and Dominic with twinkling eyes. And I have a feeling the future is going to be very interesting indeed. Isabella caught the meaningful look that passed between father and son, and she had the distinct impression that there was much more to this story than she understood. But looking at these two men, one elderly and wise, the other powerful and protective, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years. She felt like she belonged somewhere. 3 weeks into her new role as hotel manager, Isabella had transformed the Grand Palazzo's atmosphere completely. Staff morale was higher, guest satisfaction scores had improved dramatically, and she'd implemented new training programs focused on dignified service for all guests, regardless of their appearance or perceived status. But it was her growing relationship with the Russo family that truly changed her life. Henry had become a regular presence at the hotel, often sitting in the elegant lobby, reading newspapers in multiple languages while keeping a grandfatherly eye on operations. Isabella discovered he spoke 5 languages fluently, had traveled the world extensively, and possessed a sharp business mind that had clearly influenced his son's success. Dominic visited frequently as well, initially to check on hotel operations, but increasingly Isabella suspected to see her. Their conversations had evolved from purely professional to deeply personal, and she found herself looking forward to his visits with an anticipation that had nothing to do with business. "You're glowing," her assistant manager Maria commented one afternoon as Isabella returned from a lunch meeting with Dominic about hotel renovations. "I'm just excited about the new guest services initiatives," Isabella replied, but she could feel the heat in her cheeks. "Uh-huh," Maria said with a knowing smile. "And it has nothing to do with the fact that the devastatingly handsome owner can't seem to stay away from the hotel lately." Before Isabella could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from Henry. "Could you join Dominic and me for dinner tonight? There's something important we need to discuss." Isabella frowned at the message. The tone seemed more serious than Henry's usual warm invitations. That evening, Isabella found herself in the hotel's private dining room with Henry and Dominic. The atmosphere was different, more formal, more tense than their usual relaxed conversations. "Isabella," Henry began, his hands folded on the white tablecloth, "there are things about our family that you should know, things that might change how you feel about working here, about spending time with us." Isabella's stomach tightened. "What kind of things?" Dominic leaned forward, his expression serious. "My business interests extend beyond hotels and real estate, Isabella. The Russo family has connections that some people might find concerning." "What kind of connections?" Isabella asked, though she was beginning to suspect she didn't want to know the answer. "The kind that require bodyguards," Henry said gently. "The kind that mean we can't always operate in the conventional business world." Isabella looked between them, pieces clicking into place. The bodyguards, the way other business owners deferred to Dominic, the subtle undercurrent of danger she'd sensed but ignored. "You're talking about organized crime," she said quietly. "We prefer to think of it as family business," Dominic said carefully. "But yes, some of our operations exist in grey areas of the law." Isabella felt the room spinning slightly. "Are you telling me I'm working for the mafia?" "You're working for me," Dominic said firmly. "The hotel is completely legitimate. Every business practice, every financial transaction, every employee benefit, all of it is legal and above board. But the money that bought the hotel came from various sources," Henry said diplomatically. "Some more conventional than others." Isabella stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. The Chicago skyline glittered below, beautiful and dangerous, just like the man sitting behind her. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked without turning around. "Because," Dominic said, and she heard his chair scrape as he stood, "you deserve to know the truth about who we are, about who I am. And because," Henry added softly, "my son cares about you more than he's willing to admit, and you deserve to make an informed decision about whether you want to be part of our lives." Isabella turned around, her eyes meeting Dominic's. "You care about me?" "More than I should," Dominic admitted. More than is probably wise, given the circumstances. What circumstances? Isabella. Dominic moved closer, his voice dropping to that intimate tone that always made her pulse race. Being close to my family means accepting certain risks. It means understanding that there are people who would hurt you to get to me. It means living with security measures and precautions that most people never have to think about. Like the bodyguards. Like the bodyguards. Like background checks on anyone who gets close to us. Like the fact that your son would need protection if our relationship became public knowledge. Isabella's breath caught. My son. Any child connected to our family becomes a potential target. Henry explained gently. It's the reality of our world. Isabella sank back into her chair, overwhelmed. This is insane. Yes, Dominic agreed. It is. Which is why I'm giving you the choice to walk away now, before things go any further between us. And if I choose to stay, then you become family, Henry said simply. And family protects family no matter what. Isabella looked at these two men who had become so important to her in such a short time. Henry with his gentle wisdom and grandfatherly warmth. Dominic with his intensity and the way he made her feel like she was the most important person in the world when he looked at her. I need time to think, she said finally. Of course, Dominic said. Take all the time you need. As Isabella gathered her purse to leave, Henry spoke again. Isabella, dear, may I ask you something? Yes. In your life, have you ever felt truly protected, truly valued, truly part of something bigger than yourself? Isabella considered the question. Growing up in foster care, struggling as a single mother, working multiple jobs just to survive, no, she'd never felt those things. No, she admitted. That's what family gives you, Henry said softly. Real family. The kind that chooses you and stands by you no matter what. The kind that would move heaven and earth to keep you safe. That night, Isabella lay awake thinking about Henry's words. She thought about the way Dominic looked at her, the way he'd fired Sterling without hesitation to defend his father's dignity. She thought about the security and stability that being part of their world could offer her son. But she also thought about the danger, the moral ambiguity, the fact that accepting their protection might mean compromising her own values. By morning, she'd made her decision. She called Dominic at dawn. I want to stay, she said when he answered. I want to be part of your family. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long that Isabella wondered if the call had dropped. Dominic, I'm here, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Are you sure? I'm sure, Isabella said, and as she spoke the words, she realized she'd never been more certain of anything in her life. Then welcome to the family, Isabella Russo. Russo? If you'll have me, Dominic said softly. I'd like to make that official. Isabella's heart stopped. Are you asking me to marry you? I'm asking you to be mine, Dominic said, in every way that matters, forever. Looking out her apartment window at the sunrise over Chicago, Isabella smiled. Yes, she whispered. Yes to all of it. 6 months later, Isabella stood in the bridal suite of the Grand Palazzo Hotel, wearing a dress that cost more than she used to make in a year. But it wasn't the luxury that took her breath away. It was the knowledge that in 1 hour she would become Mrs. Dominic Russo. You look beautiful, cara mia, Henry said from the doorway, resplendent in his formal tuxedo. Over the past months, he'd become the grandfather figure Isabella had never had, and she'd asked him to walk her down the aisle. I'm nervous, Isabella admitted, smoothing the silk of her gown. About marrying Dominic. About everything this means. The responsibility, the danger, the fact that I'm about to become part of something so much bigger than myself. Henry moved to stand beside her at the mirror, his reflection joining hers. Do you love my son? More than I knew was possible. And he loves you, more than he's ever loved anyone, including himself sometimes. Henry's eyes twinkled. Do you know why he really fired that manager, Sterling? Isabella turned to face him. Because Sterling mistreated you. Partially, Henry said with a smile. But mostly because Dominic saw how Sterling's cruelty affected you. He saw your compassion, your courage in trying to help a stranger, and he knew in that moment that you were special, that you were someone worth protecting. He told you that? He didn't need to. I've known that boy his entire life. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. A knock on the door interrupted them. Maria peeked in, her eyes bright with excitement. Isabella, it's time. As they made their way to the hotel's grand ballroom, Isabella marveled at how her life had changed. The scared, single mother who had tried to help an elderly stranger was about to marry one of the most powerful men in Chicago. The ballroom had been transformed into something from a fairy tale, with thousands of white roses, crystal chandeliers, and soft candlelight that made everything glow. But Isabella only had eyes for the man waiting for her at the altar. Dominic stood tall and commanding in his black tuxedo, his dark hair perfectly styled, his eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her feel like she was the only person in the room. Beside him stood his best man Marco and Isabella's son Tommy, who was serving as ring-bearer and looked adorable in his miniature tuxedo. As Henry walked her down the aisle, Isabella reflected on how naturally Tommy had taken to his new family. Dominic had been patient and gentle with him, never trying to replace his father, but simply being a steady, protective presence. Henry had embraced his role as great-grandfather with enthusiasm, teaching Tommy Italian phrases and telling him stories about the old country. "Who gives this woman to be married?" the officiant asked. "Her family does," Henry said firmly, kissing Isabella's cheek before placing her hand in Dominic's. "You're beautiful," Dominic whispered as Henry stepped back. "You clean up pretty well yourself," Isabella whispered back, earning a smile that made her heart skip. The ceremony was a blur of vows, rings, and promises, but Isabella would always remember the moment when Dominic spoke his personal vows to her. "Isabella," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the ballroom, "you came into my life when I thought I knew exactly who I was and what I wanted. You showed me that there was something missing, not just in my life, but in my heart. You taught me that real strength isn't about power or control. It's about protecting the people you love, about building something beautiful together, about choosing love even when it's complicated." Isabella felt tears streaming down her cheeks as he continued. "I promise to protect you and Tommy with my life. I promise to love you through whatever challenges come our way. And I promise that no matter how dangerous my world becomes, you will always be safe in my arms." When it was Isabella's turn, she looked into Dominic's eyes and spoke from her heart. "Dominic, you've given me something I never thought I'd have. A real family. You've shown me what it means to be truly protected, truly valued, truly loved. I promise to stand by your side through whatever comes. I promise to love you, not despite the complexity of your world, but because of the man you are within it. And I promise that our family will always be built on love, respect, and the courage to do what's right." When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Dominic's kiss was gentle but possessive, a promise and a claim all at once. The reception was a celebration unlike anything Isabella had ever experienced. The guest list read like a who's who of Chicago's elite, but it was the moments with family that meant the most. Dancing with Henry, watching Tommy charm the guests with his newfound Italian phrases, and seeing the joy on everyone's faces. But the most perfect moment came later, when Isabella and Dominic snuck away from their own reception to the hotel's rooftop garden. Chicago spread out below them, glittering and alive. "Any regrets?" Dominic asked, pulling her close against the cool night air. "Only one," Isabella said, looking up at him. "What's that?" "I wish we could have this moment forever." Dominic smiled, that devastating smile that had first caught her attention months ago. "Isabella Russo. We have the rest of our lives to create moments like this." "Isabella Russo," she repeated, testing the name. "I like the sound of that." "Good." Dominic said, spinning her around so her dress flared out around them. Because you're stuck with it now. As they danced on the rooftop under the stars, Isabella thought about the elderly man who had walked into the hotel that rainy night, dignified despite his mistreatment. She thought about the choice she'd made to help him, not knowing it would change her entire life. Dominic? Thank you. For what? For seeing something in me worth protecting, for giving me a family, for showing me what love really looks like. Dominic stopped dancing and cupped her face in his hands. Isabella, you saved my father's dignity that night. But more than that, you saved me. You showed me what I was missing, what I needed to make my life complete. What was that? You, Dominic said simply. Just you. As he kissed her under the Chicago stars, Isabella knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever dangers came with being a Russo, she was exactly where she belonged. She was home. 2 years later, Isabella stood in the same rooftop garden where she and Dominic had shared their first dance as husband and wife. But now she wasn't alone. She held their 6-month-old daughter, Sophia, while watching Dominic teach Tommy how to throw a baseball in the space below. The Grand Palazzo had become more than just a hotel under Isabella's management. It had become a symbol of dignified service and family values. The staff treated every guest with respect, regardless of their appearance or status, and the hotel's reputation for excellence had only grown. Henry, now 83, spent his days doting on his grandchildren and great-grandchildren, his eyes bright with the joy of seeing his family grow and thrive. The cruel treatment he'd received that night 2 years ago seemed like a distant memory, overshadowed by all the love and happiness that had followed. "What are you thinking about, Mrs. Russo?" Dominic asked, joining her on the rooftop with Tommy riding on his shoulders. "Just how perfect this moment is," Isabella replied, leaning into her husband's warmth. "Even with all the complications." Isabella looked at her family, her husband who would move mountains to protect them, her son who had gained a father and grandfather, her daughter who would grow up surrounded by love and security, and Henry who had become the patriarch they'd all needed. "Especially with all the complications," she said, rising on her tiptoes to kiss him. "The best love stories always are. This incredible journey of family, protection, and unexpected love has reached its beautiful conclusion. If this story touched your heart, please show your support by liking and sharing it with someone who believes in the power of kindness and second chances. New stories of love, family, and transformation are coming soon. Until next time, remember that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can change everything.